Is Benjamin Sesko a no-go in January? Arsenal's search for an attacker continues. The world's woken up to just how good Miles Lewis-Skelly actually is. And is revenge on the cards this weekend as Mikel Arteta's Gunners take on Aston Villa under the lights on Saturday evening? All of that and more to come on this episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. But first, a quick message from our partners. This video is brought to you by Stocks FC. Stocks FC is the football stock market where you can buy stocks in your favorite players and earn cash rewards based on their real-life performances. To get you started, they're giving away 5 free stocks to every user that signs up this month, offering you the chance to familiarize yourself with the platform. Buy stocks in young players you fancy to prove themselves and watch their stocks rise, or invest in those you see as solid performers who will maintain their value. Earn weekly dividend payments every time your players score goals, make assists and play key passes. Your free loan stocks are eligible for payouts for a month, so why not give it a go? To claim your 5 free loan stocks and begin your journey, scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description. I'll be taking you along on my journey throughout our upcoming videos. Join me on the ride, Stocks FC. Buongiorno, Galimera, good morning. Welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, Harry Symeou. Hope you're all having a wonderful Friday so far as we build up to another weekend of Premier League action. The games are coming thick and fast. There's a game every 3 days pretty much. Was having a conversation with my son this morning who was talking to me still about the North London derby from the other night. Because, of course, at 5 years old, he couldn't stay up till the end. He didn't manage it. He was allowed to because it was North London derby night, but he just couldn't manage it. So he was asking me all these questions about the second half. Didn't really get much opportunity to talk about it yesterday. And I said to him, yeah. And then I said, we got big game tomorrow, Aston Villa. It's a revenge match, given that you could argue Aston Villa cost us the Premier League title last season. And he said, we're playing again. But we only played the other day. Even 5-year-old kids are noticing that the fixture schedule is an absolute mess. Big hello to everybody joining us live in the live chats. Good to see so many of you with us. And a big hello to everybody that will be either watching this or listening to this back a little bit later on as well. Thank you for your support. Really, really do appreciate it. Don't forget to leave a like on the video if you haven't done so already. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel as well. If you're new, that really, really does help. Thank you to everybody who's subscribed over the last week or so, or even before that, because we've hit 38,000 subscribers, which means we're now just 2,000 subscribers away on YouTube from that 40,000 target that we set for the end of the season. Can we do it? Can we get there? Hopefully, fingers crossed. And we're hitting record numbers in terms of our listenership per episode at the moment on the audio platforms. And I know it's January and I know that the window's open and I know there's been a lot to talk about recently, which has probably helped with that. But big thank you to everybody who joins us over on that side of the fence as well. We've got quite a bit to get into today. We're going to talk Benjamin Sesko a little bit. We're going to talk Sverre Nypan, the Rosenborg midfielder, being linked with a move to Arsenal. I'm not going to give you loads of insight on the guy because, quite frankly, I don't know much about him. We're going to discuss, because I wanted to touch on this, Haaland's new 9.5-year deal at Manchester City. And, of course, we're going to preview this weekend's big game against Unai Emery's Aston Villa. Is revenge on the cards for Mikel Arteta's side? I'll share with you my lineup for that one, my prediction for that one. Of course, we're recording this before Mikel Arteta has given his press conference at London Colney, but we'll go on the basis of what we know at the time. So, yeah, lots and lots to get into. Really, really looking forward to it. Okay, should we start with this Benjamin Sesko stuff? Because this was quite funny yesterday, the way this kind of all unfolded. Let's get into that now. So yesterday, I got up in the morning, recorded the podcast, got ready, set off to go to work, and went into a filming session. Was probably in the studio for about, an hour and a half, an hour and 45 minutes. And when I came out and had a look through my timeline as I was commuting home, everybody was going crazy about Benjamin Sesko. There was people putting like eye emojis and then flag emojis. There was people, recycling old episodes of their podcast or content, or people recycling episodes of other people's content where there was a focus on Benjamin Sesko, etc., etc. And I thought, hold on a minute. Has something happened here? Like, has someone broken some news of significance? And I'm scrolling through desperately trying to find this story that appears to have got everybody going again. I look at all the usual suspects. I look at the brilliant David Ornstein, nothing. I look at Fabrizio Romano, nothing. I look at some of our colleagues that I hold in incredibly high esteem, Charles Watts, lots of others, James Benge, lots of people, the brilliant Tom Canton, of course. Nobody said a word. Nobody said anything. And then I found it. Then I stumbled across it. Someone, I think from the United Stand channel, had put a piece out saying that Arsenal were in talks for Benjamin Sesko. And then I started seeing all these different variations to this story. And I got to admit, when I read the first one, I knew that this was complete and utter nonsense. Because this story said that Arsenal were in talks with RB Leipzig over a loan move for Benjamin Sesko with an option to buy him in the summer. And I just thought, whoa. Slam the brakes on here. Why would RB Leipzig loan out their best player? Why would they loan him out with no guarantee of funds to come down the line? So it's bad enough thinking that they would loan him out in the first place, but it's even worse to think that actually RB Leipzig, who are run by the Red Bull Group and who are run very, very well, would be stupid enough to allow that to happen without getting a guarantee of some incoming funds in the summer. And as soon as I read that, the whole story was dead for me. Mate, I was ready. On my way home, as I was looking for these stories, as I was looking through this this sort of mess on social media yesterday, I went back on my podcast app and found the scouting report episode that we did on Benjamin Sesko back in May so that I could listen to it, so that I could refresh my memory of what I thought about Benjamin Sesko at that time, what my kind of deep dive analysis told me about the player, so that I could get back home, set up a live stream, jump on here and record another episode of the podcast. But between my departure from work and my arrival at home, I realized it was all a load of nonsense. And instead of jumping on a live stream to talk about nothing, I was going to just put my feet up and relax. So apologies for the lack of an episode, but I didn't think it was worth it because there was nothing to talk about. Nothing to talk about. But yeah, if you do want to check out my breakdown of Benjamin Sesko, you can check out the scouting report on the Chronicles of a Gooner from back in May, where we talked about him at length. In fact, I will add the link to that in the description, because I know there's still people out there that believe that that could happen. I'm not saying that Benjamin Sesko will never join Arsenal. I'm not saying that Arsenal won't go in for him in the summer. I'm not saying that Arsenal won't even try this month and come in with a big bid and maybe tempt RB Leipzig into doing the deal now. But it isn't going to be a loan deal with an option to buy. If Arsenal were to pull that off, that might be the best deal in the history of football. But it's not going to happen, is it? Surely not. Come on, let's be serious about this. I also want to touch on Sverre Nypan, the Rosenborg midfielder, young player, attracting a lot of interest from some of Europe's biggest clubs at the moment. Do I know much about this guy? No. If these links were to become a little bit more concrete, if this story was to gain a little bit more traction, I'd probably look into him and put together one of our scouting report episodes. But at this moment in time, I just don't think that this is a story that has a great deal of weight behind it. I mean, maybe we are among a number of clubs interested, but if we are, we're one of many. And so there's no indication to me that we're further down the line than anybody else. There was some report that I read this morning that said that he prefers to join Arsenal above everybody else, maybe looking at sort of Martin Odegaard as a bit of an inspiration, as a bit of a older brother figure. I don't know. Maybe that's the case. But, Arsenal is said to be involved in the race to sign him, but whether that materializes into a deal or into, some maybe more concrete advanced interest down the line, it remains to be seen. So yeah, not going to get you all excited about that one, because how can I get you excited about a player that I don't know a great deal about? Okay, on to our next story, because this was a surprising one to wake up to this morning. Erling Haaland has put pen to paper to a new 9.5 year deal at Manchester City. It's a deal that will keep him there until 2034. I'm surprised by this, and there's a few reasons. So, first of all, when Erling Haaland sort of began his career and really started to capture the attention of the wider footballing world, there was a thought that, or a school of thought, that this was a really level headed young man with really good advisors around him, who had almost mapped out his entire career. He went from Salzburg, and then he went to the Bundesliga, and he did it in the Bundesliga, and then he joined Manchester City. And there was a lot of talk about one day he might end up at Real Madrid or Barcelona. That's kind of the next thing that he wants to do, etc., etc. We know that he's got sort of family associations with Manchester City, because obviously his father played for them, etc., etc. We know that, I think he was born in Leeds, so the UK is somewhere that I guess feels like, if not home, at least a second home to him. He's obviously very, very comfortable here, etc., etc. But I thought Erling Haaland had his sights set on bigger things. And I don't mean that disrespectfully to Manchester City, right? They've achieved incredible things over the years. But can this dynasty, if you like, continue? Well, we've already seen this season, unless you think that this is just a blip and they're going to get back on track and return to the pinnacle of English and European football. They've fallen off quite a bit. And so the timing of this, I find really, really interesting. Add into the equation all the talk in the background about the financial breaches, what that might mean, what potential punishment is coming down the line, etc., etc. When you factor all of that in, I find it strange that Erling Haaland would be wanting to commit his future for such a long time to the club. And David Ornstein's report, I'm pretty sure, says, and I've only seen a breakdown of it, but I'm pretty sure that it said that all release clauses have been removed as well. And maybe there'll be something further down the line in terms of the contract, or later in the contract, that allows him to leave, etc., etc. But it just all seems a bit strange to me on everyone's part. Like, is it Man City trying to spread a load of cost over a long time for the books to make the books look better? Probably. So from a business point of view, I can kind of see why you would do it. But I think if you look at it from a football point of view and from Erling Haaland's point of view, it's a massive risk to take. Like, you don't know what state that football club is going to be in 9 years. You don't know what state any football club is going to be in 9 years. Look at Man United. Look at Man United, one of the great powerhouses of English, European, and world football. And I'm watching them last night struggle to turn around a game against basement boys Southampton, and having to rely on a kid to crop up with a hat trick late on in the game to avoid them a major, major embarrassment. And you look at where they are in the table. What are they, 13th, 14th at the moment? It can happen. And so when you put pen to paper and commit yourself for such a long time, especially when you're a really, really elite player, like, there will be players that arrive at football clubs that you look at them and you go, okay, it doesn't get any better for you. And there are players that you look at and you think, well, the world is your oyster. Why would you ever commit for such a long time to one of these clubs? Like, I don't get it. It doesn't make a great deal of sense to me. The player doesn't know where City are going to be in all that time. City don't know where they're going to be, but also don't know where the player is going to be as well, because it's very feasible that, if you're keeping him there till he's 30 plus, once he hits 30, once he hits 29, is there going to be a drop off? I'm not saying there will be, but you just don't know. And that's why I found it really weird when Chelsea were handing out contracts of that type of length. And that's why I find it really weird that now, Manchester City are trying to do that as well. The only explanation is that from a business point of view, this is some kind of workaround to help with the books in some way, shape, or form. But yeah, strange one to me. Did you see the video? Did you see the announcement video where he talks about it? Dear defenders, blah, blah, blah. It's a little bit cringe. Go and watch it. You'll have a good old chuckle at that. Erling Haaland, new 9.5 year deal at Manchester City. Welcome back to the pod. Let's have a look at at what you guys are saying in the live chat on the Haaland stuff, and we'll come on to some of your more general and Arsenal-related questions very, very shortly. Zamoon says that's a big risk deal. Football, I'd say, football is in a straight trajectory. Injury or something could happen. Agree. Steve, and this is a good point. Some would say that this is an indication City know the court case outcome. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Sugar says, we rattled him so much he signed a death row contract during their worst run of form in recent history. Be on the Ball Football says, clearly City know that they're expecting a lengthy transfer ban, so tying down key players to a prison sentence. That's another way of looking at it. That's the kind of flip side of looking at it. But when you think about it, you could have a point on both sides with this. So yeah, really, really interesting. Pain in your butt says that's because he knows he's not that special. Look, when it comes to Erling Haaland, I know a lot of people criticize him, and I know a lot of people look at him and say, he's overhyped and he's overrated. I think he's overrated as a footballer, okay, in terms of the all-round game. But what he is an outstanding goal scorer, and that is undeniable. So it feels like a little bit of a harsh comment, but I agree that he's not the greatest footballer. I just think he's such an outstanding goal scorer that you can kind of live with that, I guess. Leroy says, smart from him. He now knows his salary is set regardless of if he drops off like Mudryk. Interesting stuff. Interesting way of looking at these things. Okay, we're going to turn our attentions to that game against Aston Villa at the weekend in just a moment. But before we do that, if I could quickly ask, if you haven't done so already, please leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new. It really, really does help. If you're listening on audio, leave us a review. All of that wonderful stuff really, really helps. There's no reason why we shouldn't have 100 likes on the board. Come on, guys. Let's get there. Let's get there. DS Electronics says, Happy New Year. Can you still say that on the 17th of January? Happy New Year to you too, mate. And a very, very special shout out to Wes Bird, who is celebrating her birthday. Massive supporter of the channel, of the pod. Thank you so, so much for all your support and for sticking with us, and wishing you a happy birthday away in Cape Verde. Nice. Nice. Enjoy. I hope the weather's better than it is here, where I have to come and put the heating on half an hour before I enter my office because it's so bloody cold. Anyway, enjoy and lap it up, because when you come back here, you're going to freeze again. Sorry to say. Right then, let's turn our attentions to the revenge match. Yes, Aston Villa did cost us the Premier League title last season with that victory at the Emirates Stadium. I still haven't got over it. I'm sure a lot of you still haven't got over it. And I kind of hate this match because I always feel like the narrative gets skewed by the fact that their manager, who is doing very, very well, was previously our manager. And the reason it gets skewed is because there's this world in which people seem to believe that Arsenal made a mistake getting rid of Unai Emery because of what he's done at Aston Villa. And I'm sorry, but that is a distorted world that you are living in. Unai Emery didn't do a good job at Arsenal, but did a very, very good job at Aston Villa. That can happen. It happens with loads of managers. There's loads of managers who you look at and you'd say, at X club, you were a success, but at Y club, you wasn't. Now, it doesn't mean that you're a crap manager because it didn't work out at one club, but it also has to be recognized that it wasn't the right fit. And for Arsenal, it certainly wasn't the right fit. And the reason I hate this match more than I would probably ordinarily or normally is because every time Aston Villa get the better of us, which has happened recently and in recent times, I know we beat them at Villa Park earlier on in the season, that sort of lazy, rubbish narrative gets wheeled out again of Unai Emery teaching Mikel Arteta a lesson, blah, 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 because he is superior, etc., etc. Look, if people want to make the case that Unai Emery is a superior manager to Mikel Arteta, I wouldn't even really argue against that. Unai Emery's won a lot. He's been very successful in his career. And, I've got immense respect for the career he's had. But when he was at Arsenal, he was a disaster. He was a car crash at Arsenal. He got a lot wrong. There's a really, really good point in the chat from More Than a Wheelchair, who says Emery had no chance at Arsenal. He wasn't properly backed by the board. And I agree with that. I do. He didn't have anywhere near the backing or the support that Mikel Arteta has had at Arsenal. And that contributed to his failure. But it was a failure. And so I want to look at the match for what it is. I want to focus on the match for what it is. I want to look at some of the tactical battles. I want to look at maybe where the game will be won and lost. I want to look at some of the history of this fixture. But what I don't want to do is be drawn into post-match. I'm okay talking about it before the match when everybody's calm and chilled. But what I don't want to be drawn into post-match is this: if Arsenal drop points, oh, we made a mistake letting Unai Emery go. Because we wouldn't be where we are today if we had Unai Emery still in charge. I don't think, because I don't think the club ever believed in him and ever backed him enough. And I also don't think that he would have made tough enough decisions to get us to where we needed to get. We needed the reset, and Unai Emery's never been that guy. I don't think anyway. But hey, I mean, you could argue that he's reset Aston Villa, took over from Steven Gerrard, but it wasn't all bad. Steven Gerrard was making a dog's dinner of it. There was players there. There was a squad there. There was a good group there. And Unai Emery managed to lift the level. But in order to oversee a total, complete and utter rebuild, which, you know, you can do over a number of years, and you need backing, of course, to do that, I think you need to be a lot more ruthless than Unai Emery has been. And there's been jobs that he's been in the past where he's been too soft. Arsenal, he was too soft. He let the players pick the captain, knowing that the captain was going to get berated by the fan. He just set up so many bad scenarios, in my opinion, by not wanting to take a decision himself. And whereas Mikel Arteta come in and was like, Mesut Ozil, see you later. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, see you later. And I just don't know that that Unai Emery would have done that at the time. But hey, let's get into this game then. Let's have a look at some of the stats, some of the history around it. It is one of the grand old Premier League fixtures, actually, when you think about it. I know Aston Villa have spent some time outside of the division as well, which is, they would say, unacceptable for a club of that size, and I kind of agree with that. But let's break it all down. So obviously this one is on Saturday at 5:30 p.m. UK time. Kicks off under the lights at Emirates Stadium. And it's the late game of the day as far as the Premier League's concerned. In terms of the head-to-head between the two teams, 59 meetings in the Premier League between these two, and Arsenal have a really dominant record, you would say, overall. 32 victories to Aston Villa's 13, and there have been 14 draws between the two clubs. If you look at the recent meetings, so let's look at the last 5 between these two. Arsenal were 2-0 winners earlier on this season at Villa Park. We didn't play very well that day. I thought they were excellent, by the way. I was at Villa Park for this one. And Villa were really, really good. Somehow, I don't know how, but we managed to dig out all 3 points from this one. If you go back to that infamous game I've mentioned on Sunday, the 14th of April, where our Premier League title dreams were, I don't want to say ended, because there was a lot of games to go after that, where we were sort of hoping every week, and we did our job from there on in. But that was the one, wasn't it, that broke hearts. And I felt like after that, you know, it was going to be a mountain to climb. Go back to the game that we played earlier on in that season. They beat us 1-0 at Villa Park in December. And then if you go back to the previous season, we've done the double over Villa with a 2-1 win at the Emirates early on in the season, and then a 4-2 victory at Villa Park, where Emi Martinez scored one off his back. Do you remember that? Yep, I remember that. I'll always remember that. If we move into the form guide, Arsenal have won 4 of their last 5 Premier League games. The away draw at Brighton, the only one in which they've dropped points. And Aston Villa have been kind of low-key solid, really, in recent times. They beat Manchester City at home by 2-1. They did lose at Newcastle, which can happen. They're a very good side. They too drew with Brighton, only their one was at home, 2-2 draw. But then they've beaten Leicester and won away at Everton. So they've won 3 of their last 5 with a draw and a defeat in there as well. If we look at the seasons so far, they sit in 7th place right now. Obviously, they've got aspirations of making it back into the Champions League. They're going really, really well in Europe, but they'll want to consolidate their status as a Champions League club, because that's how clubs push on. I always say that when talking about the Arsenal. And, you know, in 7th, they're not out of touch. they're not exactly where they want to be, but they're not out of touch. And when you think about the fact that we probably will get a 5th Champions League place here in the UK this season as well, there's a great chance that they make it again. They've won 10 games so far, drawn 5, lost 6. They score on average 1.5 goals per match, but they concede on average 1.5 goals per match. And this is what separates, I think, the very best from the next best. We concede on average just under 1, which is not good enough. But when you think about it, it's still pretty strong. Like, I say it's not good enough because we've set incredibly high defensive standards, but it's still pretty strong. And it's like, what, less or more than half a goal on average, less than them. We've kept 7 clean sheets. They've only managed 3. So what does that tell you? It tells you that you can get at this Aston Villa side. It tells you that you can hurt them. We've seemed to have this amazing ability at the moment of being able to sort of dominate games, create not always clear-cut great opportunities, but enough opportunities, and then be on the end of a really frustrating result because we haven't been able to convert. That's been the common theme recently. So I look at the low number of clean sheets that Unai Emery's side have kept. I look at the fact that, they create a fair amount of clear-cut chances per match, as do we. It should be a bit of a ding-dong, this one. It should be quite exciting. In terms of goals, Ollie Watkins has got 9 in the Premier League this season. I expect Ollie Watkins to start, by the way. At times this season, John Duran has been preferred. But I think Ollie Watkins is a bit of our kryptonite in that I think he's got everything that we don't like in a striker. Very mobile, gets around the pitch, runs the channels, pulls our centre-backs out of position, goes and pins himself in the areas where sometimes our fullbacks are responsible, which then causes us an issue. I think they did a really good job in the reverse fixture earlier in the season of coming at us with a kind of mid-block and making it quite difficult. I just wonder if we should be going a little bit more direct using Kai Havertz over the top. Is this a game for Gabriel Martinelli as a result of that? We'll talk about that when we come on to discuss Arsenal's team and Mikel Arteta's team selection. But Ollie Watkins leads the way across the two sides in terms of goal, and in joint second in Premier League goals across these two sides, it's John Duran and Kai Havertz. Hold on a minute. Is that John Duran that everybody wants Arsenal to go and break the bank for, that everybody believes is the next big thing, with the same number of goals as Kai Havertz, who everybody thinks is the worst striker in Premier League history? I think it is. They've got the same number of goals, right? So that highlights some of the points that we've been making over the last few days. In terms of assists, Bukayo Saka leads the way, but of course he's unavailable. Morgan Rogers and Yuri Tielemans have got 4 apiece. And on tackles, there's 2 Arsenal players in the top 3. Thomas Partey with 53. Yuri Tielemans has got 51. And William Saliba is on 41. DJ D10 is asking how many minutes per goal on the Duran and Havertz thing. Do you know what? I'm going to check that while we're live on air. Let me check that. Let's have a look. Kai Havertz. Let me just search this. I'm just going on to his statistical profile. Let's try and break this down if we can. Bear with me while I do this live. If you've got any questions, thoughts on anything we've just discussed while we do that, please get them in the live chat. Right. So Premier League, he's got 7 goals and he's played 1,572 minutes. Okay. So hold on. 1,572 minutes divided by 7 goals. So Kai Havertz scores a goal every 224 minutes. Okay. I'm not saying that's amazing, by the way. I'm just putting into context that you sometimes overplay how bad someone is when actually their statistics are a lot closer to maybe the median than people would actually want to sort of accept. John Duran kills him on this. John Duran has got a goal every 84 minutes. So he kills him on minutes per goal, yes. But John Duran has played like sub-minutes. That's the thing. And so, yeah, it's impressive on Duran's part. Don't get me wrong. It's impressive on Duran's part. And you make a great point highlighting the number of minutes per goal. But the point is that they've still got the same return. Okay, so I'm not saying that Kai Havertz's return can't get better or shouldn't improve. I'm simply saying that let's not pretend that Kai Havertz is like a million miles off the pace. John Duran has got 0 assists. Somebody's asked about the assists in the chat. He's got 0 assists this season. Kai Havertz has 2 assists in the Premier League and 1 in the Champions League. So Kai Havertz is not really doing a great deal in terms of assists either, to be fair. But the point I'm trying to make here is that, like, it's the perception of players, isn't it? It's the perception. It's like John Duran is the next best thing, and Kai Havertz is the worst thing, when actually the answer is John Duran's a very good striker who scores a fair amount of goals, and Kai Havertz is a decent striker who isn't that far off of where he should be. So if you, the thing is, the other way to put that into context, and you've got me thinking now, actually, because I wasn't planning on doing this bit, but I'm glad you brought it up. 224 minutes per goal for Kai Havertz. Divide that by 90. It's like 2.4 games per goal. So he's not that far off of like 1 in 2. And if you're not that far off of 1 in 2, can you be that bad? And also, Steve makes a really good point. Havertz's stats don't account for the fact that for large parts of the season when we were without Martin Odegaard, he was playing as a kind of 10. There's been points where he's played as a left 8 this season as well. So not all of those minutes that we've just counted up for Kai Havertz were with him playing at centre forward, whereas John Duran doesn't play in midfield, does he? So all great points, and a really good discussion. That's why I love doing this pod live, right? Because you get stuff like that thrown in and you get to kind of go down those rabbit holes. But thank you so much. Okay, let's have a look at some of the match facts going into this one then, shall we? Aston Villa versus Arsenal. Big old game. Of course, Arsenal lost this exact fixture 2-0 last season. They've not lost consecutive home league games against Aston Villa since their first 2 meetings in the Premier League, where they lost 1-0 in the 92-93 season and 2-1 in the 93-94 season. Aston Villa have won 5 of their last 10 Premier League meetings with Arsenal, which is as many as they had in their previous 46 against the Gunners. So their record against us has improved recently. None of the last 18 Premier League meetings between Arsenal and Aston Villa have been drawn. That should tell you where to put your money if you're having a little bit of a bet. The Gunners have only had a longer run against Newcastle, while the Villains have only had a longer run against Tottenham. Having lost just 1 of their first 13 Premier League away games against London sides under Emery, Aston Villa have lost their last 2 visits to the capital by an aggregate score of 7-1. Arsenal are unbeaten in their last 13 Premier League home games since a 2-0 defeat to Aston Villa last April. The Gunners last had a longer run without defeat at the Emirates between August and April in 2018-19 under current Villa boss Unai Emery. Okay. And also, Arsenal haven't lost any of their last 44 games in all competitions in which they've scored a goal. So when we score, we don't lose, basically. That's since a 2-1 defeat against Fulham in December 2023. Okay, that's enough of those stats. They're doing my head in. Right. Shall we move on to talk a little bit about the lineup? How would you like to see Arsenal line up for this one? Remember, leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, leave us a review, all the rest of it. If you're listening on audio, please do your thing. I'll catch you all right after another very, very short pause where we're going to get ready to talk lineups. Okay, so what would you go with? I'm really interested to hear what you guys would go with based on, I guess, the fitness, the sharpness of the group. You know, we've played a lot of football. We haven't got that many options in that many areas at the moment, which is, for me, making it quite tough, making it quite difficult to kind of put my finger on what exactly I think the team should be, because there are players that I certainly saw in that second half against Spurs really drop off in terms of their energy levels, like really, really drop off. And we had to call on the squad to make sure that we got over the line in that game. We talked about it the other day. Kieran Tierney had to come on. Mikel Merino had to come on. Zinchenko had to come on. Martinelli had to come off the bench. I guess I'm quite set on the lineup that I would pick this weekend. And this is based on everybody that was fit, being fit and continuing to be available. But let me just show you what I'm going with, because I think there's a couple of decisions to be made. And I think my answers, at least in my own head anyway, on these are sort of pretty clear. So Raya, the goalkeeper, no question about that. Timber, Saliba, Gabriel continue as part of the back four. No doubt about that in my mind. And there's also no doubt in my mind that Miles Lewis-Skelly deserves to carry on at left back. I thought that Ricardo Calafiori would be back for the North London derby. There was sort of hints that he would, that there was hints that he was at least in contention. It feels to me like more than anything, Arsenal are just trying to keep it quiet. The fact that he is just struggling with injuries right now. And it's a bit of a problem for us. You know, we paid a lot of money for this guy in the summer. We all expressed concerns about his previous injury record. And unfortunately, we've seen nothing so far to suggest that this isn't going to be an ongoing problem and an ongoing issue. And I don't want him to become the next Takahiro Tomiyasu, but I'm really worried about that. Having said that, even if Ricardo Calafiori was fit, available, and raring to go, he does not deserve to start ahead of Miles Lewis-Skelly right now. But it's not just about who deserves to start right now. It's not just about who warrants a place or deserves a place. It's about making sure that the team is fit enough, is sharp enough, and is okay, essentially, given the mad run of fixtures that we've been on, games every sort of 3 days. We've got to be able to just sort of manage players in a way that allows them to, when they do play, perform as close to their peak level as possible. Lewis-Skelly hasn't played so much football this season that you're looking at him and thinking red zone, red zone, red zone. But he's also 18 years old and hasn't played that much senior football. And the intensity at senior level is just so much higher than down at Premier League 2 level that it's going to take some time for him to adapt and adjust to it. Declan Rice mentioned the other day that the players don't have a great deal of time to practice at the moment in between games because the games are coming thick and fast. And so I think there's probably something in that. I think that, you know, there's probably very little training going on. I think they're probably coming in, recovering, doing a little bit of ball work here and there, but not really exerting themselves too much and maybe focusing on rest and recovery. Your fitness levels should be at a good standard at this point in the season anyway. And you should be able to kind of manage that during these really, really difficult periods. So my back four, Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, and Lewis-Skelly. If Calafiori's available, it would be a boost because it means that at some point in the game, you could give someone else a breather if things are going the right way and you feel like there's a possibility to do that. Also, look, Kieran Tierney's obviously an option. Like Mikel Arteta called on him from the bench the other day. Zinchenko's an option as well, but I prefer Kieran Tierney defensively. There's no question about that. I prefer Zinchenko offensively. So it depends on game state. It depends on the context of things, I guess. And that's going to dictate maybe whether any of those guys are utilized on the day. The midfield for me, I wasn't massively impressed with Partey the other day. Like I thought there were moments where he would like get the ball on the turn and spin away from someone and look tip top, fantastic. And there were moments where I thought he looked sluggish and sloppy and not quick enough across the ground. I just can't make my mind up on Thomas Partey this season. For 2-3 weeks, I'm waxing lyrical about him. And then for 2-3 weeks, I'm sitting there watching him with real concern. But I still think that the most balanced midfield and best balanced midfield that we have is one that contains him, Declan Rice, and Martin Odegaard in it. So again, I'd start with that. I'd continue with Havertz up front. I'd continue with Leandro Trossard because obviously didn't play the whole game the other night, but looked back to something more like his best the other day. That was the Leandro Trossard that we've been watching the last season and a half, where he's been impactful in the final third, a little bit more direct, a little bit less hesitant in terms of what he's doing in and around the penalty box. Probably could have scored at least one more against Tottenham, Leandro Trossard, but given that his confidence will be sky high after what was, I think, a first goal since November the other night, I would play Trossard. So I'd play him and I'd play Martinelli. I don't think Raheem Sterling did enough. I'm sorry. He just didn't do enough to justify another starting selection for me. I don't know what you guys think about that. Let me know in the chat. But yeah, that would be my team then. So Raya in goal, Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, and Lewis Skelly. Partey, Rice, and Odegaard are my midfield trio. And then I'm going Trossard and Martinelli on either side of Kai Havertz. That's with Trossard on the left and Martinelli on the right. That is my team. That is the team that I would pick to face Aston Villa this weekend. Right, time for you guys to let me know your thoughts and get your questions in. We'll also bring you a prediction before we sign out. So yeah, let's do that next. Predictions. I've been really good with my predictions this season because I keep a note of them. I've been really, really good with them. Like when I get it right, obviously, and it's happy days. But there's been days where I've got them really close. So like the other night, I had 3-1 and it should have been 3-1. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't, but it should have been. It could have been 2-2 as well, some would argue. But yeah, I'm going to go for the famous old 1-0 to the Arsenal. I feel like, look, we weren't perfect against Tottenham. Let's not pretend that we were. We weren't perfect at all, not by any stretch of the imagination. There's a lot that needed working on even still. But I think the result, the outcome, it did enough to lift the mood. And now I'm expecting a really cracking atmosphere at the Emirates, which I think could be the difference maker. And I think could see us get just over the line. So I'm predicting a narrow Arsenal victory. I'm going to go Arsenal 1, Aston Villa 0. That's my prediction for this one. Get yours in the live chat as well. I'd love to hear from you. Okay, let's take some of your thoughts from the live chat. Visuals Multimedia says, Partey has been our most consistent player, getting played in and out of position. The way he won the ball back for Trossard's goal, no one else in the squad does that. I agree that there are moments with Thomas Partey where you look at him and you're just like, wow, right? But there were also moments where he turned into trouble, where he gave the ball away on the edge of our box. And that's my problem with Thomas Partey right now. It's all so up and down. Do I deny that he's got quality and that when he's on song, he's a really, really good player? No, I think he's fantastic. I love Thomas Partey as a footballer. I love what he brings to the table when he's fit and when he's available. But and when he's at his best, because it's one thing being available and then it's another thing being at your best. And I don't think he's always been at his best when he's been available. And I think there's been times where we've had to manage him through periods and he hasn't looked great. And yeah, it's very up and down. Inconsistency is the word, I would say. I don't know why people think he's super consistent. He's been inconsistent within matches, let alone across multiple matches. I think earlier in the season, he went for a period where he was really consistent and he deserved a lot of praise for that. But recently, again, it's gone back to the kind of ups and downs, at least in my opinion. Lots of predictions coming through. John says, do you think that if the young lad was scoring a barrel load of goals for us that went to United, he'd be starting for us now? Are you talking about Chido Obi Martin? Look at Ethan and Miles Lewis-Skelly. He's been advised wrong, in my opinion. It's a hard one with Chido Obi Martin because he wasn't at like the level just below the first team. He was at the level below that. So you'd have been asking the club to bump him up quite a bit really quickly. Difficult to say, man. Difficult to say. Maybe he has been advised badly. I don't know. Only time's going to tell, right? Does he go on and achieve what he could? We'll see. We'll see over the course of his career. Boston says, any news on Ethan Nwaneri? Not at the minute. Not that I'm aware of. Mikel Arteta is due to give a press conference a little bit later on today. So we'll probably understand a little bit more about that later. You know, Mikel Arteta probably won't give anything away anyway. You probably keep it very, very sort of quiet and very, very sort of, Mikel Arteta, which is, we've got one more training session and we'll see. That's the line that he's going to roll out. We know that. So yeah. Yeah, cool. Let's see. Fingers crossed he's back sooner rather than later. I think Mikel gave an indication just a few days ago that he was sort of close to at least sort of being back in the mix. So hopefully that's the case. Flashlight Junkie says, Harry, who do you think is better suited for this team, Sesko or Vlahovic? Personally, I think Benjamin Sesko, but I don't think that's a deal you're going to be able to do this month, as we've sort of discussed a little bit earlier on. This is a question. John also asks, now you're hanging out with loads of ex-footballers and celebrities. I wouldn't say that. Who's the nicest one you've got to know, mate? There are so many. Look, I'm not going to go through names because I don't want to like miss someone out that has been really helpful to me or really nice to me. What I would say is there's some really, really great people and there's some pretty cold people as well. And that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. Halo says, isn't it actually more worrying that the first 11 is set right now? There are no clear contenders for the positions, in my opinion. Yeah, well, I don't think that's necessarily true, because if you go through the team, you know, when he's fit, you can certainly make a case that Ricardo Calafiori plays at left back. When Ben White's fit, you can make a case that he plays at right back. People will argue that Marino can play in midfield. Some people would argue that the balance is a little bit better when Jorginho plays in midfield. When Saka's back in, Trossard and Martinelli aren't guaranteed starters. It's one or the other. With Jesus being in the form that he was pre the injury, I don't think it was always a given that Havertz was going to start up front against him. In fact, it wasn't. So I think the injuries make it look like the starting 11 is dead set. Whereas, although I say that the summer transfer window wasn't the resounding success that we wanted it to be, we did succeed in one department, which was kind of leveling up a little bit from the sort of the ground up. We sort of raised the floor rather than the ceiling, in my opinion. So that happened. But maybe not to the level that some people hoped for. Michael says, Harry, great show. I think fundamentally the biggest issue Arteta has created for himself is that our highest paid player is not even in the top 6 or 7 players at the club, in my opinion. But we done a lot of work as a football club to get rid of big wages so that we could then offer big salaries when we were trying to attract players and move forward as a team. And that's just part of being better. That's just part of growing and being successful. And, you know, the next player that comes in will probably go right up there in terms of his salary. And then, you know, you might get a player that you think is third or fourth favorite, or third or fourth best, whose contract is up for renewal. And then when you're doing that negotiation, you have to bump up his wages, which then takes him above someone else. Do you see what I mean? That's an ever evolving situation. That's an ever sort of changing environment. So yeah, I don't really read too much into that. I just think that's one of the problems that you've got to deal with along the way if you're going to improve and bring in better players. Arsenal Avenger says, do you think we can win the title? I've always been a believer. Do I think we can? I absolutely think we can. Do I think we will? I don't know. That's a different question. But of course, you've got to believe that we can. We got so close over the last couple of seasons. Why can't we do it again? And people keep saying that we've been really bad this season and really poor and really below where we all expected. We were having all these same conversations in January last year after that FA Cup defeat at the hands of Liverpool, weren't we? And look at the run we went on. Maybe we don't go on a run like that again because it was such a good run. But if we can get close to that run, we will be there or thereabouts. We will be in the mix, I promise. Okay. I think, guys, I am going to leave it there. Really, really appreciate you all tuning in on this Friday morning to preview the weekend's big game and gloss over some of the transfer stuff that has been doing the rounds over the last 24 hours. I'll tell you what I do want to say before I quickly jump off. If you haven't watched it already yesterday and you want a nice breakdown of where Arsenal are at in this transfer window, go over to Sophie Nicolaou's Highbury squad. She did a fantastic episode yesterday with David Ornstein, who poured cold water over the Sesko stuff, at least for now. But he's just doing his job. He's telling the truth, etc., etc. Go check it out. Have a look. Big shout out to Sophie. That's a massive get in terms of the quality of guest. And yeah, she's fantastic and deserves all the praise in the world. So make sure you go over and check that out. Before I leave you, just want to quickly remind you guys that this podcast is brought to you by Stocks FC, where you can invest in your favorite players and see their values go up and down. It's not a get rich quick scheme, so please don't view it like that, and only play if you can afford to play. But it is a lot of fun. It's got me hooked, and it's got me really sort of looking into match weeks in a lot more detail than I would normally. As I say, you can buy stocks in your favorite players and earn dividend payments as they contribute positively to football matches. You'll also see their value decline if they're not playing very well. And it's really, really interesting to hear from people that are watching this pod at the moment who are playing this along with me and hear the varying approaches. So I've gone down the road of I'm going to try and buy stocks while they're low and hope that they go up. So I've got stocks in Kai Havertz. I've got stocks in Gabriel Martinelli. I've got stocks in Bernardo Silva, who I thought had a, by his standards, lousy first half of the season. I've got Ben White stocks because I think when he comes back and people start to value him again, he's going to shoot up. I've got Brian Mbeumo in there as one who I hoped would continue to rise in terms of his stock. That's not really happened. Yeah, I'm sort of enjoying playing the game and sort of trying to be savvy and smart and trying to be a little bit ahead of the curve. It's really great fun, but it is just a game. And please do not play if you cannot afford. Please do not commit more than you're able to lose. But it's a great bit of fun, and we thank Stocks FC for their support of the podcast. If you click the QR code in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, you'll be able to claim 5 free loan stocks that will get you started, and you can earn on those stocks for the first month. And then should you wish to invest, should you wish to play with some of your own money, you can do that as well. But check it out, Stocks FC, and we thank them very, very much for their support of the Chronicles of a Gooner. Okay, time to sign out. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for keeping me company on this Friday as we build up to Arsenal versus Aston Villa. I'll see you all on the next episode. Until then, take care of yourselves and have a cracking day. Goodbye.